creating the matrix, but I think I'm less interested in our robotic overlords sapping our energy. I'm more interested in creating meaningful worlds where we can have emotional interactions that feel as meaningful in the digital world as they do in the physical. With one caveat, I'm not a computer scientist. I'm a recovering British diplomat, so I can talk to you in Pashto or Dari, but not Scala or C#. But what I do know is that whether it's Daesh or ISIS recruiting on Twitter, whether it's Chinese offensive cyber operations, whether it's the Russians hacking certain elections, the digital world has profound influences on the physical world, and that's only increasing. So we're in the middle of a general election in the UK, and Theresa May, who's our Prime Minister, in her manifesto, the Conservative Party manifesto, she said that if it's a crime in the physical world, it should be a crime in the digital world. So if I say to you, I'm going to kill you, hopefully a burly NYPD police officer will stop me doing that. If I say I'm going to kill you over Twitter, ideally some kind of digital policing, whether it's a real human being or some kind of artificial intelligence bot, will flag that up and ideally say there should be some kind of sanction. Because what we're finding is that that digital world feels as viscerally important to our generation and successive generations as what we typically consider to be physical reality. So what we're trying to do at Improbable is lay the foundations, the software foundations that harness some interesting cloud computing orchestration revolutions, that harness some pretty magical algorithms that I have no clue what they're about, and provide the software for recreating messy, ambiguous worlds that feel like the physical world but are a digital experience. But on the way to that, what we've figured out is that we start with simulations, and we start with simulations that look at discrete entities that we know something about. So we know how individual power networks function. We know how individual autonomous vehicles function. But once we smash all of these things together into that messy ambiguity, we get complex systems with unpredictable emergent behavior. And we can't predict that as simple human beings. A minister can't stick the finger in the air and say, I know with certainty what autonomous vehicles are going to do in the streets of London. Pattern recognition and big data cannot help us with that problem. So instead, we need to use software platforms like ours and lots of computational techniques to completely recreate the physical world in a digital space. There is absolutely no reason why now this old white man who's a government minister should be sticking his finger in the air and saying, my intuition means we should do this policy. We should be using all of the computational techniques and software to make better decisions. Some of these important decisions are literally existential. And yet, the way in which I was poring over a map in southern Afghanistan 5 years ago would have felt exactly the same to a 19th century staff officer on Wellington's staff at the Battle of Waterloo. That is patently absurd. If we've got these technologies, we should be leveraging them. We shouldn't be testing policy interventions in the city of New York for the first time with real people. We have this opportunity to have a virtual sandbox. And this is what we've been doing with the British and American governments. This is the largest simulation, the most complicated simulation ever created. It's a one-to-one replica of the city of Cambridge, so it's also beautiful, with all of the different networks, whether it's transportation, whether it's sewage, whether it's pedestrians, whether it's the internet, and they're all interconnected. So using cloud computation, using software like ours, you can suddenly connect those networks, whereas traditional software approaches could maybe only do a single road intersection. We can use that existing software that's been verified and validated and spin up hundreds of thousands of versions of them as microservices to co-simulate the same space. And this is where the visual element comes in. If we consume most of our information visually, presenting a government minister with a 1,000-word report from some big data analytics is not going to make it meaningful to them. Instead, we use our origins in the game industry to visualize those complex systems in game engines. And the aspiration is to build digital worlds where everything matters, where my little Cocker Spaniel in real life, there's a digital representation of him, and it feels as meaningful. I want to look after him digitally as much as I do running around the garden at home. And I started off with a matrix. Ideally, what we're trying to do is version 0.1 of the Oasis, just without all of the evil corporate undertones of that. Thank you.